Hello, and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. My name is Mark Johnson, Editorial Board Chair for CDO Magazine and Executive Leader for Strategic Data Management Analytics at Fusion Alliance here in Cincinnati. We're partnering with MIT CDO IQ and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Natalia Connolly, Vice President of Data Science at Infinite Acres. Natalia, welcome to the interview.
Thank you so much for having me.
One of the things that struck me in the tour that we took a couple of weeks ago is there were some folks walking around, and I said, "So where are the farmers?" And they were the farmers, and so
they were the farmers.
But you've also redefined what it means to be a farmer with ag tech in the vertical farming industry. Can you just talk about the role of the farmer and how that sort of builds upon the traditional farmer out on the family farm in the field, evaluating circumstances and conditions for the crops they're growing in the open space versus now that farmer skill set morphing with some additional insights to work in the vertical farming industry. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you pointed out, in the past, creating beautiful, healthy produce really was often a matter of an individual farmer or farmers relying on their experience, their knowledge, which was often, passed down from generation to generation. And we would never, ever attempt to replace the deep understanding of crops that comes from experienced growers. What we're doing is really formalizing and codifying that knowledge in the form of predictive modeling, right? And so the role of the farmer is still absolutely essential. It's still very crucial that deep understanding of crops comes first. But there's a layer of technology that comes on top of it that helps the grower, that directs the grower, and essentially results in the most beautiful combination of that agricultural knowledge and technology that produces outstanding results, outstanding harvests.
That's really fascinating. Now, behind you, I can see a field,
Yeah.
a vertical field of plants. What is that? Do you know what's growing behind you?
Yeah, so this is one of our lettuces that we grow, and so that it just came out ready for harvest, and our consumers will get it tomorrow.
Wow. And so if you've really compressed the time out of the equation from farm to market as well, then not only the distance and transportation. And it's my understanding that you're able to deploy these vertical farms even right within the center of the city, for example, in abandoned or converted warehouses that already exist. Can you just talk a little bit about that concept?
Yes, absolutely. We didn't have time when you toured 70K, but we actually have a farm nearby there on Vine Street, and that's exactly what you've just described. It was an abandoned building. It's a three-story building. It's about 100 years old, and we converted it to a tomato farm. And so now when you walk in there, it's absolutely striking. You would never expect it from a building that looks, the way it does from the outside. And then you walk in and you see beautiful tomatoes growing everywhere in this somewhat eerie red light, because that's what the plant's like. And so we harvest those tomatoes, and they have quite a following actually in our local stores at Kroger's and at Jungle Gyms and others. People absolutely love them. They're nutritious, they're healthy, and they're just so tasty.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. So how does data science improve plant growth, health, and flavor? Can you elaborate a little bit on how you're using those insights to control and direct those aspects?
Absolutely. So through all these sensors and cameras that we've talked about, we collect very large data sets of various environmental factors that might affect our resultant harvest, right? So things like temperature, humidity, CO2 intake, fertilizer content, lighting, all of that data is collected constantly. And we also collect the data on the resultant harvest quality, such as, the weight, the health, the nutritional flavor profiles, all of these things that matter to our consumers. And so with that much rich data, we can train machine learning models that learn to recognize certain patterns. So just to give you an example, let's say a certain combination of environmental factors tends to be associated with a harvest that's, let's say, higher in vitamin C or something like that, right? So it basically learns these correlations, learns these patterns. And so we build these predictive models, and they help us understand not only what kind of harvest we can reasonably expect, given, a certain set of input conditions, but also it allows us to sort of hone in on the specific environmental factors that are particularly crucial for producing a certain outcome, be it a flavor profile or a nutritional profile or anything else that the customers might like. And so once we have that understanding, that sort of points the way to further experimenting with those factors. And so we can steer the development of a crop in a desired direction. So that is exactly how we produce, better plants, healthier plants, more flavorful plants, using data science.
Wow, that's fascinating. And so as we think about data science and artificial intelligence on the sort of the outer end of this, can you tell us a little bit about the role of AI in the equation and how does that assist with food safety?
Yeah, oh, that's a wonderful question. So AI, data science, is central to all of our endeavors, and it's also crucial for producing food safely. Um, our plants grow in this tightly controlled environment that's monitored by a sophisticated remote monitoring system. And so we use that technology plus AI algorithms. And that means there's really not a whole lot of need for humans to intervene in the process if everything is running as intended. And so humans are kept out of the food production environment. And that reduces any chance that they will introduce pathogens with them as they go in and out. And so that's a huge factor, really, in helping to promote that healthy environment where the plants grow. Additionally, because our grow zones are equipped with so many cameras and sensors, we constantly get that stream of data from the grow zones, and we catch any kind of anomalies and deviations from normal. So, for instance, should there be a pest outbreak? There has never been one yet, but should there be one, we will catch it right away just by processing the images from the grow zone. And so that will allow us to isolate that outbreak so there's no further spread. And so again, it's just a perfect environment really for producing food safely.
Yeah, and that actually brings me to another question around, pests. Since it's an indoor farming, kind of climate controlled space, insects and pesticides aren't really needed. But is there any sort of negative consequence of the absence of those of the sort of the insect dimension of the environmental growing experience of plants that it affects the way the plants develop?
That's such an interesting question. So we do, as a matter of fact, have bees in our tomato facility, and they pollinate the plants. They're the best at this. I mean, nature made them that way, and they're absolutely perfect at the job. There's no need to replace them. They're obviously hugely beneficial, not a whole lot of downside to that unless, somebody's allergic to bee stings. But apart from that, yeah, they're absolutely buzzing around, pollinating tomatoes. So not every insect is kept out of the production environment. If they're there, for a great reason, they're beneficial. Absolutely.
Well, one of the things I did notice when we did the tour was how uniformly perfect the plants ready for harvest looked. And so in terms of that, it caused me to think of, the percentage of crop fail versus, crop success. Can you speak a little bit on the analytics insights on, crop failure in your environment as compared to in the general, exterior outdoor, farming environment?
Yeah, so that's another huge advantage of this tightly controlled environment. If you control the environment in which the plants grow, if you know exactly what goes into them, then you can reasonably expect that you will produce the same exact harvest, the same quality of harvest at any time, right? And so this consistency is absolutely crucial for us, and that's exactly what we observe. We consistently get, great harvests because we control the environment so tightly, because we constantly monitor for any deviations from ideal conditions, right? And so if you ensure that your inputs are just right and tightly controlled, the outputs will be too. And so that's exactly what we observe. There's no, weather patterns. There's no outside influences of any kind. It's all very, very tightly controlled.
Yeah, so these questions have really set you up for the mothership question coming next. And we are CDO Magazine, and the core of our focus is to educate our global readers on the importance of the curation of the use and consumption of the big D data, right? And so it sounds like to me that if data were not available, or if the quality of the data was compromised, or if the stream of collection of data were impacted, that the vertical farming industry really couldn't exist with the success that it has today. So, as we think about that, can you talk a little bit about the role of the constant data loop in perfect crop recipes? But before you talk about the role, can you tell us what the constant data loop is and how critical and central that discipline is to success with what you do?
Absolutely. That is a very insightful question. Absolutely. So we are a big D data environment. Absolutely. We collect so much data constantly, every day, every hour of the day. And we use all of that data, all of that available data that we collect during the growth process, all of the environmental data, all of the nutrient data, all of the lighting conditions, everything that potentially affects our crops. We collect that data all the time. And the reason we do that is we not only screen for anomalies, as we've discussed, but we also develop predictive models for our harvest, right? And so that will allow us to anticipate exactly what we'll get at the next harvest, but also it allows us to rank the factors that contribute to the outcome that we observe in order of importance. So we do sort of a feature importance profile there. And that allows us to create a consistent growing recipe using those factors that contribute the most to a given outcome, to a desired outcome. And the process is 100% iterative. So it's a loop, right? So we basically tweak the growing conditions a little bit and collect all the data with those conditions. We observe what kind of outcomes we get in terms of our harvest. Use the guidance from the model then that predicted that outcome to tweak the growing conditions just a little bit again. And then we do it over and over and over again until the growing conditions are just right. And so that allows us to perfect our recipes so that we get exactly the harvest that we need consistently. And so that's this data loop, that's this recipe loop that's constantly going on in our farms.
And so just to make sure that our readers aren't confused, we're not talking about a recipe for great kale salad. We're talking about a recipe for producing great kale, correct?
That is exactly right. Yeah, that's a very important distinction. Although we have the other kind of recipes too.
That's wonderful. After I made the tour, I happened to stop on the way home by my local neighborhood Kroger. I had to pick up some tomatoes for a salad, as a matter of fact. And I went to the produce department, and there your product was in the organic food section. So could you tell me a little bit about the nature of the classification of your produce as organic, versus traditionally produced produce?
Yeah, so we're pesticide free because, as we pointed out, there's really not a whole lot of need for any kind of pesticides when you have such a tightly controlled environment. So all of our food is produced 100% naturally. We're also kosher certified, which was a great honor and really a testament as to how high quality our product really is. So it's pest free, and it's just healthy and natural and absolutely delicious, I hope.
Awesome. Well, for our viewers, thank you so much for tuning into this interview. And we certainly have more fascinating interviews like this at CDO Magazine. So if you're interested in exploring what we have to offer, the insights that are coming from around the world on the role that data and analytics is playing in the success of our world, especially getting through the pandemic, please visit cdomagazine.tech and just search right on the site, and you'll find some great additional interviews. Again, Mark Johnson, Vice President of Fusion Alliance in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky region, Executive Leader for Strategic Data Management and Analytics at Fusion, and Executive Chair for the CDO Magazine Editorial Board. So we're excited to have you join us today. Thank you so much, and have a great day.